I was rewatching my video from yesterday, and after reviewing that, I wanted to add just a quick supplemental video to serve as, I guess, a bit of a cautionary warning. I wouldn't say necessarily a disclaimer, but a bit of just a warning when it comes to analyzing books and what that does to the pleasure of reading itself. I remember when I was, I think, early into my grad school, and I was getting a bit more in depth into understanding books, how to break down structure, how to analyze the different aspects of it, and just how, just being able to go through novels and figure out what the author's doing. When I started to learn how to do that, though, the one negative that I found was the magic of reading went away, or at least partially went away. And for those that are going to start learning how to analyze books, ones that are going to start to learn how to break down how an author uses certain techniques, it's important to go in knowing that some of the joy in reading might disappear. To be honest, books don't hold the same sort of magic that it might when you were younger, or when you weren't necessarily reading to understand. You were just reading just for the pleasure of understanding the content and enjoying just the content of what was written. And the reason for this is that anytime you go, I'll use the term meta, anytime you sort of understand the inner workings of something, the magic of that thing goes away. A magician will never enjoy a magic act the same way the audience will enjoy another person's magic act. The magician's always watching it to understand the trick, to see how they're pulling it off, to learn the technique. The audience is just loving the actual experience of it. And it's also the same way, a filmmaker will probably never watch a movie like someone, like a regular lay person will watch a movie. The filmmaker watches the movie always in the back of his mind. Just I imagine that it can't even be shut off. Just in the back of his mind, they're watching it to understand. Oh, okay, this is how they film the scene. This is the lighting. This is the camera angle, etc. That they're always, the mind's always trying to deconstruct how it's done, and it's the same thing I find with books. I very rarely ever read a book now, and am ever reading just for the pleasure. The books don't necessarily hold the sort of magic allure that it once had. I still enjoy it. I still love the process of it, but it's not like that sort of fascination, that fun and fascination that maybe I had when I was younger. Especially when you're like a kid or a teenager and you're reading. Books today for me don't necessarily hold that same type of magic. It holds more of an interest, but but my mind's always going. My mind is always trying to deconstruct how things are done. I'll always try to figure out how the author did this. And if I feel a certain emotion, like if I feel really tied into a story, or if there's a particular chapter that I really like, I'll actually go back. Like my mind's already going back and having me reread it to understand how the author did that. So and anytime I'm really ever enthralled, my mind's still my mind's still kicking in and going, all right, that's fun, you enjoyed that. Now go back and figure out how it's done. It's a very sort of automatic thing. And so I just wanted to do a quick video, just in case anyone starts doing what I've talked about in my prior video here, in case anyone starts trying to deconstruct certain authors' works. You may find that tends to go away. I don't know if it ever comes back. I don't know if I'm not sure if there ever comes a time when you can kind of shut that part of your mind off. I certainly have not found that yet. Maybe at some point does. Maybe occasionally there'll be a rare story that does that you read and it just pulls you in. Just the story is so engaging that your mind, your analytical mind just shuts off. But for me, it hasn't. My analytical mind has always been on. It's always sort of firing whenever I read. And it's, I mean, certainly it's worth the trade-off. It's worth understanding how authors do something just to have a little bit less magic in the reading, I find. But again, it's good to go into these sort of things with full knowledge of what the repercussions could be. And let's be honest here. I mean, we're discussing reading. It's not like it's not the end of the world. This is not something where this is not some big life or death decision here. So I certainly don't want to build this up to be some like great like, oh, cautionary warning about doing this. The consequences aren't that terrible at all. But if you find yourself going through this process of deconstructing authors and you start to realize, man, I can't remember the last time in the past 6 months that I read a book and I really felt captivated and enjoyed it and just was sucked in. That's a pretty common reaction. That's a pretty tends to be a pretty common result of doing this sort of study.